Hey folks, this is Pablo Heyman coming to you again from the beautiful beaches once again. And basically, we're now looking at where the treasury yield, where the stock market, and where Bitcoin is headed. So let's go. Basically, the last few times we've spoken, we've been talking about looking at the stock market and Bitcoin in terms of inflation. And inflation is not fast falling. It is looking like it is slow falling for now. Of course, the data might change, as soon as next month. But for now, we're looking at how the market is reacting to that. The US 10-year Treasury yields and US 2-year Treasury yields. So here we go. First of all, this is the US 10-year, and we can see that it is now almost at the new high, making a new high almost, or some people might call that a double top. And if it was to pull back here, then we'd get a big market in the stock market and big bottom in Bitcoin. And this is important. Why? Because look at this. When was last time it made a double top like this? Last time it made a high was here, June 14th, right? June 14th. And then it went down, right? And that's when we into August, and that's when we got the Bitcoin bounce. Let me just graph the Bitcoin and the stock market next to it. We will be able to see it very well. And let's see the SPY. And so now we can see it all on the same chart. Yeah. So the yellow line is Bitcoin and the purple line is the stock market. So we can see here, right? Basically, June 14th, the US 10-year Treasury yield peaked and went down, and that's when stock market went on for a big bounce, the SP 500. The purple line, the SP 500, yellow line is Bitcoin. So we can see there's a very strong relationship here. What happened on June 14th? Well, basically, Bitcoin came out, it was 2 months ago when the CPI came out at 9.1, and the market correctly predicted it was going to be peak inflation. And that's actually what happened. It was peak inflation, and inflation has gone down since then. Problem is, it was fast falling for 1 month and then it slowed down. Now, and the bond market is very accurate. So they correctly predicted this and turned up on the 2nd of August, right? Right at the start of August, it started turning up. So now, one more problem we want to point out. The SP 500 went for a big bounce, then came back down. Bitcoin, look at this, hardly went for a bounce. It was almost flat. Now, we know it got up to 25K, and Ethereum went on a big run to 2.5x, right? We can chart some like Ethereum on this as well. Ethereum would look like the SP 500, but now both are down. And so it shows that Bitcoin's in a very weak position. It doesn't even make big bounces. So now the question is, this time we've got the US 10-year yield up at another high, and then shouldn't the SP 500 and Bitcoin be back at the lows? Now, Bitcoin's already back here, right? Got down to 18.5K like 24 hours ago. It can visit 17.6, which was the low from June, and can even go into 16K, right? Without breaking down, can go to 16K and then pull back. The SP 500 for it to be up here doesn't make sense. SP 500 is still holding the low, a higher low from, say, back in May, right? Back in May. SP 500 needs to get down to the June lows, which is, which is when the US 10-year Treasury yield last made its high. Now, if people want to know, well, it could go anywhere here. Could be a double top in US 10-year Treasury yield. Yes, I agree that could happen, but I'm leaning towards for the US 10-year Treasury yield to head higher. Why is that? Well, because look at the last time we had the top in US 10-year Treasury yield. It was a berserk, crazy, climactic move. It just went straight up, right, on a lot of volume. And usually those climactic moves have pullbacks, and that's what happened. Whereas this time, it's just been going up steadily. That may not be the only reason. Let's have a look at it on the weekly chart. Actually, the water is coming right up to me now, so I'll probably have to move first. Let me move first, and then... and now we're back. And the US Treasury yields, because if we look at it on a weekly, look at this. On a weekly chart, we can see that this June 14th June 13th was a spike up, right? The weekly close was here at 3.23. And then since then, we've had one close above, two weekly closes above, right? We've just started the new week, so we had two weekly closes above this old high. And the long term, if you look at this, long-term support resistance line is this pink line here. We can see this pink line goes all the way back to 2003. So that's 19 years ago, right? It's supported. The US 10-year Treasury yield were acted as resistance many, many times. So it's a very strong support and resistance line. But this time, and it again acted as major support and resistance. So the weekly of June 13th closed below that one, we can see. But however, this time, the weekly, as we can see, has closed above, right? And not only so, it has closed twice above. So this is not a prediction for what will happen in, say, 2 days' time when the Federal Reserve makes these interest rate decisions. I believe most of it is priced in. We could even get a bounce in the stock market. But however, it's saying over the next few weeks, it should continue to go up. It can pull back, bounce off this line, bounce off this support, like something just above 3%, and then bounce up, bounce off the trend line, or bounce off this 3.223 level, 3.22, 3.23 level. Whatever it does, it looks like it's broken. This major support, 19-year-long support resistance line. I've drawn it in pink here. It should bounce up from here. Again, I'll show it to you guys. See, that's how long, right, this thing's been going for since 2003. Major level, and it respected it again just back in June when it couldn't hold the highs and closed here, and that's when it turned down. So, what does this mean then for Bitcoin? Let's have a look. Say Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin, as I've been saying, is in this very narrow triangle now. Let's have a look. See, since March, and this was when I made that video saying those 7 to 10-year-old Bitcoins. 7 to 10-year-old Bitcoins have been sold. They've been sold, and they've basically, that's a major warning. And since then, we've gone down from, say, 48K down to 17K. That was a big crash in Bitcoin. And now look at this. Now, basically, Bitcoin is making almost a double bottom now. So this trend line, this red trend line I've drawn in red, has been acting as resistance for the last 5 months or so. However, this double bottom around 17K, 18K area has acted as bottom once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times down, and might even actually hold again. So Bitcoin is kind of running out of room in this area now. Now basically Bitcoin might bounce up. If it breaks this line, I think that'll be very significant. If it can break this red line, which I thought it was breaking it on September 11th, September 12th, but then the CPI came out. It was a really bad CPI, so it crashed below. If, say, so the scenario would be either Bitcoin breaks above here or it goes below here. If it goes below, we can see that on the weekly chart. Oh, actually, that's not the one. We need to use a long, bigger. Okay, we can see that if Bitcoin breaks down from this level, then next level is around the 12,700 level, because there's even from the last bull run. This is a weekly chart from 2018. Not much happens between 17 to 12, 13,000. Right, for that 5,000 area, there's not much happens. So chances are we get a bottom somewhere around 12,000K if this 17K level is broken. And that's very significant because, see, we've had a long-term trend line from back here in 2013. If we follow that line, 2013 is supported during 2015. That's the previous cycle bottom, and it's supported again during the COVID crash of March 2020, and now look at this on the weekly. It was broken, then faked out. Now it's broken again, and if it closes down here, now we'll consider this trend line to be broken. So if we get a weekly close below 19,330, then I would consider this trend line to be broken, and that's obviously very significant because it's a trend line that supported Bitcoin since what? Since 2013. So that's a pretty big, pretty big trend line to break. Overall, so which way do we think Bitcoin is headed now? Do we think Bitcoin is headed up or down? Well, that depends on if we think the SPY, the SP 500, is headed up or down. But do we think, how do we know if the SPY, the US stock market SP 500, is headed up or down? Well, the way I tell is by looking at the US 10-year Treasury yields. And if last time in June, US 10-year Treasury yields peaked, and that's when Bitcoin and stocks bottom, then why not this time? Again, as we just saw, the US 10-year Treasury yield is at that high place again, and it's closing now. Before it couldn't close. It's closed for 2 weeks now, above the highest close from June. So I think this says to me, chances are, highly likely US 10-year Treasury yield is now firmly confirming and standing above its historical resistance level from 20 years ago. That means US 10-year Treasury yield will likely in the next few weeks, not next week, not next 2 weeks, but next few weeks, likely push up from here. If it pushes up, then we make a new high on the US 10-year Treasury yield, and that would mean at least a double bottom on the SPY or SP 500 and on Bitcoin. That means SPY is going to 362, the 362 area. That means Bitcoin's at least going to 17K, might even test even lower. So in the next few weeks. Of course, all depends on the US 10-year Treasury yield. If it does make a double peak, which I'm not expecting it to, and it turns down, then Bitcoin and the stock market should bounce up hard. I am leaning towards a breakdown in SP 500 towards at least a double bottom. So SPY should get to at least 362 or lower, and I'm thinking Bitcoin double bottom or lower. And especially if the US 10-year yield has higher, which I think it is going to do, then it's looking like out of that triangle with the big red trend line drawn in red. For now, I'm leaning towards a breakdown. Again, we just got to watch the US 10-year Treasury yield. Okay, thank you for your time, folks. Enjoy the life around you. Save up some money. Some big buying opportunities are coming up. This is Pablo signing out.